Hello. Welcome. Once again to the Kindred UMC live show. Coming to you not live. I said live show. Live show. Coming to you not live at all.
You almost
but
said live
instead
again.
Pre-recorded from Kindred Studio A, aka my front room.
Shut the...
Hey! Hey! You all behave!
I'll do it again.
This is going to be a thing every
This is why the Jags lost.
week.
You're the reason.
No, the Jags lost because you're bad at
Nobody
fantasy
cares.
football.
Nobody cares. We're studying the 10 Commandments. I'm Chris Hayden. I'm the pastor, the anointed spokesperson for Jesus of Kindred UMC.
Hi, I'm Courtney Young. I'm the Director of Community Engagement at Kindred UMC. I'm better than Preston at fantasy football.
And I'm Preston. Be sure to tend to all of your gardens. Your social gardens, your emotional gardens, and your love gardens.
That's a good word, Preston.
Yeah, thank you.
High five.
Is your fantasy football garden included in that? Because you're not really tending to it, though.
Here we are at the end of the Decalogue.
Aren't you losing?
No, I'm winning by a lot.
All right. Okay. I don't know what to do with you two.
I'm being patient here.
We have been talking about the 10 Commandments, and we have studied all 10 of the commandments. They're found both in Deuteronomy and Exodus. We've been looking at Exodus. And now we come to the epilogue, the response of the people towards these 10 of the first commandments. Excuse me. So we're looking at Exodus chapter 20. And we're looking at verses 18 through 21, and they sound like this. So this is after after God has delivered the 10 Commandments to the people. And 18. When all the people witnessed thunder and lightning, the sound of the trumpet, and the mountain smoking, they were afraid. We're going to make note of that word right there because that's a bad translation. That's not what it means. They weren't afraid. That's not what it says. They may have been afraid, but that's not what that word means. But let's just deal with it now. It's a Hebrew word, teresu, I think. And it literally means in every other context to witness, to see. So they weren't afraid, they saw. So a better translation, a more accurate translation of the Hebrew is, they saw and trembled and stood at a distance, rather than they were afraid and trembled and stood. They witnessed, they saw and trembled and stood at a distance and said to Moses, "You speak to us and we will listen, but do not let God speak to us, or we will die." And Moses said to the people, "Do not be afraid." This word actually means afraid. Now, I don't understand this. This is so weird to me. When all the people witnessed, that word witnessed is the same as afraid that's translated later. So when all the people witnessed the thunder, lightning, and the sound of the trumpet and the mountain smoking, they witnessed and trembled is what it actually says. Those are the same words in Hebrew. And then later we come down to this word afraid, where Moses says, "Do not be afraid." That's a different word. So I don't know what the translators did in the NRSV. And this is kind of one of the problems with Scripture. So I don't have, there's not like an exegetical, clear, oh, and that means this. It's just more of an interesting thing about hey man, have a skeptic eye when you're reading English translations. This is a bad translation of this particular text. So the people witnessed all these things, and then Moses said, "Do not be afraid, for God has come only to test you and to put the fear of him upon you, so that you do not sin." Then the people stood at a distance while Moses drew near to the thick darkness where God was. So let's just break it down because I broke it up a little bit. So God appears in smoke and fire to all the people of Israel. He delivers the 10 Commandments, speaks out of the cloud, delivers the 10 Commandments, and then the people's reaction is what?
Nope.
Yeah. I'm out.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. Well, like, and yes, and can you be a little bit more specific about it?
I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
This is terrifying.
Yeah.
What the heck is actually happening here?
Yeah, they trembled. And specifically the language is they back away. They leave the presence of God. They say to Moses, no. You be our intermediary. We are going to draw away from God. And then Moses says, wait. God only came here to speak this to you so that you would not sin. Which can feel a little authoritarian, but I would invite you to couch it in our previous context about what the purpose of the law is. We tend to think of the law as this oppressive thing, and the law originally is intended as a gift. It's like like the title of this series is 10 Rules for a Better Life. Wink, wink, self-helpy, but also, no, really, the law is intended for how do you make the most of your existence? And even though it is tempting to lie to get your way, I'm telling you, telling the truth is going to be like living a life of honesty is better than living a life of deceit. You will be happier and fuller and better if you do it this way, not that way. Like the law is a gift. And in the face of this gift, the people draw away and they say, no. You talk to God and talk to us. We don't want to talk to God. And then Moses, his response is to draw near to God as a result. So we have what's called a contrast. We have the people drawing away and Moses drawing to God. Now, this is abstract, so just kind of like go with me, okay? Last week we talked about covet. Mm-hmm. The law, which is do not covet your neighbor's stuff, your neighbor's life. Essentially what that law is, do not reduce your neighbor to the things that they have. Like, do not make of them just... Oh, is somebody here? I just heard a doorbell. I believe that's a Brandon.
Oh.
So do not make your neighbor into a thing. And here we have this, like, the message of this law is given to you as a gift, and the people are like, we're deathly afraid. Here's the abstract part. I think that these two things are next to each other on purpose, and that what's really going on is that the people are making of God's law, like they're not seeing God, they're seeing the thing. They're essentially objectifying God to the like rules that we ought to follow rather than the heart of God that is revealed. So the point of the law is to reveal God's heart and to invite us into relationship. That's what Moses embodies. Moses is comfortable drawing near to God now that he knows what God's rules are, because now he knows who God is. And the people can't make that connection. And all they're afraid of is breaking the rules and suffering punishment. So, with those two contrasting views of God in our head, the God who punishes for breaking the rules versus the God who is giving us genuine guidance and genuine grace and genuine, like, here's how to be yourself. I want to ask, how has the church, in your experience, dealt with those two ideas of God? Who do you know God to be on that spectrum of, like, how God is?
I'm going to say, which church?
Okay.
Different experiences.
Yeah.
And is something like right now?
No, you can go.
Okay. So like I'm wondering if it's when I was versus where I was. So if I'm at a church when I'm preteen, teen, young adult, leave to go to college somewhere else. Am I growing up there with my brain forming to follow rules? Or am I seeing it through a lens of myself forming, so I have to conform to something happening there? Meaning, the church is teaching me how to be and live and act around people. Or am I supposed to venture out like I did, go find a church that appeals with whatever I'm feeling and thinking, and have them teach me how to be and live and respect and rule and follow? Does that make sense? Okay.
It makes sense to me. That's how I think about things.
Okay.
That's exactly where I think. I think that's where the church has a gap. Is in like what you described. I think is healthy and good. The danger, though, is at what point does faith become just what we feel?
Right. Or is it something that's been shoved down our throat?
Well, so I think there's plenty of that going around.
Yeah.
Like the pendulum's pretty far in that direction. I think as far as most American church and quite frankly global churches go, as best I can tell. Global churches are even far more conservative and far more concerned with like obeying the societal rules that we've established.
Have faith or die is what I
Kind of, yeah, like a little bit, like, and not even have faith, but like have the specific kind of belief and theology that we have agreed upon or die. You know, like it's not enough to say like, no, I'm a follower of Jesus. I believe in Jesus. I just think a little differently than you. It's like, well, then that makes you not a follower of Jesus. Fucking stone him. Like, and that's kind of the human tendency for a long, long time.
Yeah, I think it's way easier to sit in the black and white and rules and have those kinds of conversations.
How come? That's a theme that you've talked about.
I was going to elaborate. Because it's heady. Because it's easier to talk about what it is. And I was just at lunch with a friend talking about just some stuff they were going through. And the thing they kept coming back to was talking through the situation and talking about what was physically happening. And it's way easier to do that because it doesn't require us to be vulnerable and sit in the uncomfortable. It allows us to stay in our comfort zone and kind of just think through things. And what's a lot harder is to let yourself get into that heart space.
So what is that? Why is thinking through things... So I have two questions simultaneously. One, why do you think thinking through things is like the kind of the go-to defense mechanism?
I have an answer.
And two, I'm presuming we agree on this, but feel free to disagree with me. Why is that not effective?
Okay.
Why does that not actually work?
So my answer to your first question, and again, I just came from a conversation with a friend just talking through life.
Also, let's just acknowledge, like, we've been in multiple conversations in group settings about this exact topic many times.
I think thinking through things and staying in your head, the reason that that's the go-to coping mechanism is because people associate that as being the strong one. Of protecting themselves, of protecting their energy. They have to show up and be strong for whether it's the people in their family or their friendships or protecting their own energy, whatever that looks like. To stay up here is very protective and it's not inherently vulnerable. There's no consequences. Like there's no risk of being betrayed. There's no risk of it hurting.
I would say there's something about like it. So a really hard core tangible example is so like Jim Carrey when he played the Grinch and he had just layers of makeup and like he was in this weird suit for hours on hours and like he talked about how painful it was to be in that makeup, and one of the ways that he talked about dealing with the physical pain of it, because he literally had like CIA torture experts come in and train him not to like feel pain. Like that was one of the ways that we got that movie. And like one of the things, like he talked about the mental strategies of disassociating with your body, disassociating with the pain and the feeling so that you could stay in your head. And there's something like our brains actually have a capacity to do that psychologically. Like, and like you can do it through like tangible things. Like if you have a headache, you can like smack your leg. And like for a moment, you will not be focused on your headache.
Right.
And then there's much more complex psychological ways of doing that by like zenning out and focusing on and disassociating with your physicality, and like there are lots of different ways. And I think that's a small version of what's going on. It's coping with the pain, but it's not addressing the thing that's causing the pain. It's like, and getting in your head is a way of like getting out. And like, that's very important when you're in a crisis.
Right.
Like when your daughter breaks her arm and you have to deal with getting her to the hospital immediately, you want to be able to dissociate from the emotion and the pain of it so that you can navigate the strategies of getting this child help as soon as possible. However, after that, you are going to have to address the reality that like, oh my God, I love something so much that is so vulnerable that could be taken away from me at any time.
Right, and carrying that strong, like I have to be strong, I have to be protective. If you just continue to carry that instead of stopping and sitting and feeling in that, well then guess what? That's gonna bleed over into every other kind of relationship you have, whether it's a friendship, a relationship.
Let's stop there, because you're exactly right. Every other kind of relationship, and namely the topic of this podcast or live show or whatever, also necessarily your relationship with God. And that's what I think we're seeing here.
Right.
We're seeing a disassociation, like a coping mechanism that's like, what if I'm not good enough? I'd rather you talk to him. And I think that definitely spreads to like, I mean, God, how many missed opportunities romantically or friendship wise or like socially have we all participated in where we could have made a friend or perhaps fallen in love or perhaps connected with that family member because we were unwilling to take the risk.
Right.
Because we were too delicate and too fragile and unwilling to address the fear and the pain of it. And instead we opted to just like, I'm just going to distance myself. I'm just going to stand over here because it's better to be in my head than it is to feel the pain of what's going on right now.
Right.
Or to risk feeling the pain of, because the other thing that's wrapped up in that is that you could risk feeling the joy and love of actually connecting with someone.
Right. You can't selectively numb.
Right.
Yeah. You either numb everything or numb nothing.
Yeah. It's an all or nothing gamut. You can't just numb the I'm afraid feelings.
Right.
If you numb the I'm afraid feelings, you necessarily numb the I love and I connect feelings also.
100%.
Like, and you just like, and that's a psychological phenomenon that has been studied. So there's something interesting going on here. The contrast between the Israelites who hear the law and are like, I'm afraid, and they back away. And Moses, who says, no, God's here because he wants you to love and have life and be good. Like, and like some of this language is tricky because the language that the Bible uses and in this interpretation, in this specific translation is, no, God only came because he doesn't want you to sin. That's tricky language because I know the word sin is like, can like fuck us up a little bit, frankly. But the real, like, actual heart of what's happening here is Moses is saying, God doesn't want you to be afraid of him.
Right.
God doesn't want you to not connect with God or existence or yourself or the piece of image of God that's on you. God doesn't want that. God wants you to have a meaningful, full life. And this is a gift on purpose so that you might live a full life that's connected to him. And in response, the people go, I'm scared. And they back away. So I want to, I'm asking, and as we kind of approach our end here, what have you seen that in modern life? Have you seen people or Christianity or even people who are afraid of Christianity, like,
You want to go into this right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh boy.
I will say
have we met? Yes, I do.
I'll say all of modernity is like this right now. Everybody right now is trying to weasel or figure out a way to sound better than their neighbor. One, to claim they are better than their neighbor, and 2, to claim they are better than their neighbor to themselves.
This is a little bit where we ended last week about the law was intended internal, and everyone has a tendency to be like,
Yeah. Here's what I've been thinking while y'all have been divulging without me. One-upping. One-upping is a humongous thing in whatever culture we're in now. I have seen this through better than you have, and I can aid you in navigating something like this. That's the one-up feel. It sounds
it makes me think of social media in a lot of ways.
It sounds helpful, but it's coming from
Instagram, Twitter.
Yeah.
It makes me think of a lot of that.
Yeah. It sounds helpful, but it's coming from a place of selfishness. It's coming from a place of, I want to help you so I look better helping you. Rather than I want to help you so you can be on the same plane with me.
I think there's a lot of posturing.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of self-posturing.
I think a lot of imposter syndrome, too, happening.
Well, that's like the darker side
I think those two things are in a circle together.
Yeah, because
Right.
if I tell myself
you
I'm
feel like
helping
an
you,
imposter, or you feel like a not good enough, and so you try to put something out there, and like social
You try to
media,
numb the I'm not good enough by putting...
Yeah, you're coping with that rather than addressing the feeling. You're coping with the feeling by putting a version of you out there.
Yep.
That then is like appears better.
Well,
than
and
what
it's
it
that
is.
protective energy too. It's if I can put myself out there, then I can trick everybody into thinking I'm okay.
And the myth is that when people affirm this image that I put out there, then I'll feel better. It will address the feeling.
Correct.
But the reality is, how that actually feels is, nobody sees me, they only see the image.
Yeah.
They're only affirming the image. Nobody actually likes who I really am. Nobody's actually connecting with what I really am about. They're only connecting with the image that I'm creating and generating.
Who is at the butt of the crime and the butt of the joke but yourself? The whole time.
Right.
The whole time. Well, you've spun it on yourself. You're tricking yourself into doing this.
100%.
So again, like this is a common theme with this whole church thing we're doing. This is why we worship a crucified God. The counterintuitive truth to life is that in the midst of those moments, it's not to put up a false idol version of yourself, but instead to really truly accept the vulnerable risk of, what if I just was myself and allowed myself to genuinely try to connect, and it will not always work out.
Right.
It will hurt. You're going to hurt. But that hurt will absolutely lead you to life and connection and love. And that is the metaphor of the cross. That is the crucified, dead, and resurrected God that invites us to join in the crucifixion, resurrection, and crucifixion, death, and resurrection. Like, that is the purpose of the metaphor of the cross that we're all invited into. When we find ourselves in those places, not to respond with coping, but instead to respond with vulnerability, knowing that, there's a likelihood that we're going to suffer some hurt here, and that you don't deserve to be hurt, and that's a result of a broken system, but also greater than that hurt is the potential for real connection, real love, real life, real fullness of existence. And that's the point of this law that's been given to us. It's a gift that allows us to live into the fullness of who we are. So, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.